thought it would be nice to get together and talk about bullying awareness, dyslexia, and ADHD, just to honor the months that the awareness that they're trying to get out there. And because I think we know that those are a lot of the reasons why parents call us, that their children are dealing with those challenges. So I will say that I'm the mom of a kiddo diagnosed with dyslexia, with ADHD, who unfortunately was also bullied. So definitely this month hits a bunch of topics that I've had experience with, but I'd love to hear from you all and any experience that you have with any of those topics, any wisdom you'd like to share with the people who are listening.
I think the first thing like that comes to mind for me whenever things are going on and you are trying to get a diagnosis for your child and you're researching, you're doing all this stuff trying to figure out what it could be that's going on. And you get told like through evaluations or the school or different people, they might have ADHD, they could have this or that with it, but we're not going to give that diagnosis yet. We're going to give it some more time, give him some time, him or her some time to develop and not give you that diagnosis. I strongly believe that a parent's first instinct of something's going on is usually correct. They do know that something is going on. And I just would encourage them to keep pushing for that diagnosis, because it almost feels like a relief to not get a diagnosis. But when you have one and it's official, you can do something about it. There are the IEP, there's so many things that you can do, services you can receive, so many things. And if you don't do that, if you don't have that diagnosis, then you can't give them the proper help. So I've talked to so many parents that are like, well, they said they don't really have it. They think they might. And I just know like that child would be better off, honestly, if they had the diagnosis, if something's going on. So I just encourage parents to really believe in their own instincts and trust that and keep pushing until it's 100% no, they don't have it, or it's 100% that they do, because it's not fair to be in limbo and not know what that diagnosis is.
Yeah, that's so rough when they're telling you to like, wait, wait, wait. My youngest, he's in kindergarten. He's had, some attention struggles from the very get since he was like an early Head Start. And every year at the pediatrician, I'm like, so are we gonna, could you send me for an evaluation? Can you send me for evaluation? They're like, no, he's immature. Just wait, just wait. So he started kindergarten this year, and like we had open house or whatever. And the learning support teacher was like, I really think he has ADHD. Like, you should take him to be PC. And I'm like, I've asked the pediatrician for 3 years to please send me for an evaluation. I was like, so, but hopefully now we'll be able to get that diagnosis. I only knew what to look for because I have an older kiddo. She's 11 with an ADHD diagnosis that she got in kindergarten also. And I wish I would have got that earlier. I didn't know with her because she was my oldest and I had no clue. Um, but she's doing extremely well, but I feel like we intervened early enough. Hopefully with him we can intervene early enough and get him the help that he needs now.
What was interesting with the case I just assisted with, I went in person to an IEP, and the mom, this little guy, he was in 4th grade and he's being bullied, and he's got, ASD, he's on the spectrum somewhere, and he's got ADHD. And one of the counselors actually said, we don't need the diagnosis. We treat the child, not the label.
Love
And
that.
I said, oh, okay, well, I'm glad you're treating the child, but you're not treating him because he's continuing to be bullied. And he's got some ADHD things going on. I saw it. So I said, a lot of more doors would be open if, he had that diagnosis in place, just because you don't think or think he does. How about, an update evaluation? But it was amazing that this a guidance counselor said that. Oh, it doesn't. We don't need that. We treat the child, not the label. I'm like, well, we still need that label for a lot of reasons. Doors
Yeah.
open. So it was crazy that even now that still happens. I mean, it happens.
You're
And
muted.
it's fine that they want to say. And it's kind of funny because some schools will say, "Oh, without a label, we can't do anything," and then other schools will be like, "Oh, yeah, the label doesn't matter." I think sometimes they play it both ways for whatever tends to work for them. I say, if you see one child with dyslexia, you've seen one child with dyslexia. You could put 12 kiddos with dyslexia or with ADHD in a room. And while there may be some similarities, it's the way their disability manifests may be very different from child to child. So think about girls where they say, "Oh, girls don't have ADHD." We know that that's not true. Girls keep their ADHD inside, where especially when boys are little, they're wigglier. But girls are inattentive in a different kind of way. Maybe girls are described as daydreamers. But we know that now that too is ADHD. So I love the idea of treating the child if we're actually doing it. But if, as you're saying, like the child wasn't being helped correctly, both with potential ADHD and definite bullying, then okay, if you're telling me you treat the child, then treat the child because you're not doing it. But I will caution that schools, ADHD is a medical diagnosis, and schools cannot diagnose ADHD. That is something that requires a medical diagnosis. But quite often, it's the schools that notice it first, because we don't have an artificial environment where our children, could you imagine Saturday morning, our children woke up and walked into, I don't know, the living room, and they had a space where they had to sit still and do things that maybe they don't like to do for 45 minutes. And if they needed to go to the bathroom, they had to raise their hand. Our homes are not designed like that. So for many of us, we might not see the same things that they see at school, because our kids can, maybe when they get up in the morning, if Jill was here, she'd probably say her kids get up in the morning and they run out to the barn. And so they're burning off that energy. So then maybe they can come back and sit and eat a meal. But we don't have that at school. Our days are designed for our kiddos, very structured, with this idea of sit still and focus.
I'm
I
an
think,
adult and I struggle with that. Sitting still.
yeah.
Right?
For me, it's staying focused, trying to stay focused. On purpose, I have to very much think about it.
Oh, so
Well,
true. Me too.
And think about it. If you have, maybe before you guys call a family, if you're going to talk to a family virtually, maybe before you call a family, you get up and you take a walk. And maybe you may not even recognize, but maybe you just get up and go to the bathroom and then get yourself a drink. And I don't know, maybe, while I'm up, let me do this one or two things, and then let me go sit and call this family. And your body may be creating an environment where you can sit still and focus by giving you those couple minutes of movement. But our children in school can't do that on their own. Oh, wait a minute, I have to sit down and read these two paragraphs. Let me go get a drink of water and let me stretch my legs and talk to a friend, and then go sit down and read those two paragraphs. They don't have that freedom that we as adults do, hopefully, once we get older, to be able to self-accommodate.
I actually think that's why my oldest is doing well in middle school this year. We were really worried about it. Big transition. She's always struggled, whatever. She's doing fantastic. I mean, she has always in a B, which is amazing for her. She's always had a tough time, and she's doing it on her own. I'm not micromanaging her at all. But I think it's because she can move. I think it's just because she
Yeah.
can move. She's up in between classes, she's in different classes with different kids, and I think that that made such a big difference for her, like, ADHD brain, being able to, like, go to her locker, grab a drink of water, whatever, she's up moving around, and I think that that has made a huge difference for her.
And she's old enough that she's starting to understand her own behavior. She is working really hard to get that, to do that, to get those grades. Uh, some kids don't even have to think about it. They're just, they go through the day and, information comes in, it stays there. They're able to put it back out. And, whenever I hear of a kid doing that that has any kind of learning disability, mental health diagnosis, they're working really hard. They really are. And it's in the forefront of their mind. I have to do this. I have to do that, make themselves do it. So I'm proud of her. That's wonderful.
So am I. I'm, like, blown away. I at first thought it was a fluke and that they must all be doing, like, as well as she is, but then after talking to, like, a couple of her friends' parents that the kids never struggled in elementary school, and they're like, "Oh, no, she has a D in this, or she's not doing well in this, and she's not doing her assignments," and I'm like, "Holy crap, AJ, like, you're doing so good, I'm so proud of you." Because she has I mean, really struggled. I mean, she had Fs in 1st grade, like, she has really struggled,
Hmm.
and so she's doing super well, and I think that it's because she can move and has, like, some freedom because she's never been too good with any kind of structure. She doesn't like to be told what to do. So, I'm happy to see
That's
that
awesome.
transition and maybe somebody out there who's really scared about their kid going to middle school or high school, maybe they'll do a million times better in a different environment.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that matters, and definitely, like you said, getting the way the classes are structured, being able to stand up and just even take that short walk to get some of that energy out is fantastic. And maybe, a different moving to from class to class, sitting in different seats, being surrounded by different people, just the way different teachers teach, I think could, provide some opportunities for us. But we're talking about bullying as well, and the need for schools to post their bullying, anti-bullying, rules, policies. Melissa, you were talking about that before we got started.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll link all of this information at the bottom of the podcast. But if you search bullying, which I'm sure if your child has done it or has been bullied, you've done some research. But there are guidelines from the government for Pennsylvania and federal government policies. Public schools that accept funding from federal government and from their state, they are required to have a anti-bullying policy. This policy has to include what the consequences of bullying will be. With the first consequence, second, and third, what's going to happen if this gets brought to light to the school. A lot of the schools, some of them are wonderful. Some of them have their website, the handbook. It has everything step by step what's going to happen. It's unacceptable. This is what we're going to do about it. And then we find some that they tell the state, yes, this is our policy. They turn it, and they have to turn it in every year, confirming this is what our bullying policy is. And then it's really vague on the website. It's really vague. I mean, honestly, I just seen one the other day that said it's unacceptable and they will be disciplined. It does not say how they'll be disciplined. If it's the first offense, second offense. I have heard where a child was taken into the principal's office with the person that was bullying them and was told, don't do that anymore. Okay, go back to class. What do you think happened next? That child has been given permission,
Yeah.
been told it's okay to do this because they didn't get in trouble. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, how many kids are actually scared to just get called to the principal's office, and that upsets them enough that they're never going to do that again?
Yeah, not anymore.
They may have been scared walking in, but when they walked out, they're like, "They didn't even call my mom. Nothing happened," you know? Of course, they're gonna do it again, and it's been proven it escalates. It's not just that one thing that happened that made somebody come forward in the first place. It just keeps happening, and then this child who's over here doing it to somebody else, they hear so and so got called to the office, nothing happened to them. Of course, they're gonna keep doing it. The school is
Yeah.
teaching them that it's okay to do that.
Yep. Well, there's in all of the schools that I've worked with now, one of the things that's pretty consistent is it starts at the top. So if the school administration has a permissive attitude where when a kid's bullying, he's going to get called into the principal's office and practically walk out with a lollipop. Like, hey, I know that I've heard that maybe you might be bullying and I don't want to hear it again, or whatever silliness they say. It's not taken seriously. And that attitude of permissiveness just trickles through the whole school. And you may have a teachers can make a difference. Teachers can set a zero tolerance policy in their classroom where we don't talk like that to each other. I'm not allowing that. And so in their own classrooms, teachers can be helpful and create a safe space for children. But what I have noticed is that it comes from the top. If you know, and often principals are smart enough when someone from the outside comes in and asks about bullying, often principals are smart enough to say what they're supposed to say. But when you dig in a little bit and talk about, so what's your plan to make sure that this doesn't happen again? Let's talk about, you know, like, how are you handling this specific situation? And if they can't give you specifics, and if they don't sound right, if they say the words but you're not seeing the actions follow it up, then you could tell how permissive it's going to be in the school, which is really upsetting because, you know, principals can really set the tone of, we don't talk like this to each other, we don't behave like this in the school. And I don't necessarily believe in like a zero tolerance policy. I think that we have highly educated educators, and because of that, they should be able to use that knowledge that they have so that they're not stuck with one solution. Like, you can only be a hammer, and, you know, you can't work in different ways to help mediate the situation. But they do need to, you know, like, really set that tone of, this isn't going to happen here and I don't want it.
And it sets the tone for if a child is being bullied, they come forward. That in itself is a big deal to get a child to share with another adult, a trusted adult, that something's going on. Almost every child that is being bullied, one, doesn't want it to happen, but they also don't want to tell other people it's happening. It's embarrassing. There's so many things about it and how it affects the entire family. It affects the children that see it, that weren't even the ones that were bullied. It affects the person that's doing the bullying. And what's so frustrating, it is 2023. We know, we've had these studies. Not just parents know this, the educators know this, the people that are implementing policies and doing all this stuff. They know what happens when somebody is bullying, what that does to them. And then you add in a child like any of ours. Chrissy's daughter's working her butt off to be there. I mean, she's working every day actively to get through her day, do what she's supposed to do. You have a child that's working that hard and becoming a teenager. It has its all new sets of things that are going on. Somebody like that starts getting bullied, they could be derailed for years from being treated that way. And then you have two sides of it. You have the parent that by law you have to send your child to school. You have to. So you have to continue to send your child to a place that they're being hurt, um, that is got to be excruciating for a parent. You go through all of the right things, you call the numbers, you call, complain, you send emails, you do all this stuff, quiets down for a day or two, boom, starts back up again. That is a lot on an entire family going through something like that. And it should not be going on. We know the consequences of this happening to someone. It just shouldn't be going on anymore. And it is. It's
And
actively.
Melissa, I like when you talked about the family. I mean, we're sending our beautiful, beautiful children into this environment that they don't feel safe in. What does that do to us as caregivers, as parents, as moms, you know? And then our mental health, it's just a lot. It's a lot to process. It's mentally draining and exhausting because, you know, school's supposed to be a safe place to learn, to have fun, to socialize, to learn all these things about growing up into the next phase, to going middle school or going to high school. And these kiddos are bringing something, you know, whether they're, you know, they're being bullied and somebody finds out, they go to a principal, they're going right back to a classroom of 20, 30 kiddos in a little box. And it's, you know, if it's not addressed, it's going to start up again. Like you said, a day or two might go by, but that's a very, very difficult place for a child and a family to be in.
Yep.
It's a tough thing, especially when they're little, to be honest. Like my older one, like if something happens, she has her phone at school. She can message me, she can email me from her Chromebook, whatever. But my kindergartner last year had a problem with a kid um, making fun of the way he dressed because he liked Spider-Man and Marvel and all of that stuff. He's in kindergarten and he's liked Spider-Man since he was like 2 years old. He dressed up like Spider-Man. There's backstory. I'm actually biologically his aunt. Spider-Man was raised by his Aunt May. So, you know, there
Aw.
was some like connection there. He's a Spider-Man room. But this kid Steven made fun of him all year, told him he wore baby clothes, wore baby clothes, wore baby clothes. Now he hates Spider-Man, won't look at Spider-Man. I have
Aw.
to redo his room.
Oh,
I had to go buy him all new clothes. He won't wear anything with a character on it. Not Pikachu, not Spider-Man, not anything else a 6-year-old boy would like. He wears like Nike Champion polo, has to be a brand name, which whatever, we're not like a brand snobby family. I'm not. He's been wearing like Target Spider-Man his whole life. But he can't text me and be like, Steven's being mean or he's having a bad day. And he didn't want to tell me at first. So he was like coming home acting like he was mad at me. And I thought there was like something going on until like I dug a little deeper and I found out that he was like getting made fun of by this kid at school. So we bought him new stuff but he still like to this day will not like the stuff that he used to like. And it like took some of his, you know, mojo
Totally.
away from him, you know? It's sad.
Well, I think that you bring up a good point that our kiddos have a tough day at school, and then they come home and they take it out on us.
Hmm.
And they have to release it somewhere. They do. But if we don't know, and most of us don't, then we're like, wait, why are you being so rude to me? Don't talk to me like that. Because we don't know. We don't. And our our kids won't tell us what's happening. So when they talk to us like that, we're like, don't be rude to me or don't talk to me like that. And then maybe later on we say, like, what's going on? They don't want to tell us. So we just think our kids are rude or, you know, disrespectful or whatever, which creates then a negative environment at home. And then they have a negative environment at school. And so there's no place that they can go where they're safe and things are okay. And you can see how that could really cause some long-term problems. But I think if there are people in the community whose children aren't being bullied, they're not affected by this, but they can be. And all of us as a community should be concerned about bullying because research shows that when a child witnesses bullying, they're not involved. Maybe they don't know the kid. Maybe, you know, like they just kind of see it happening. That child is more likely to miss school because kids aren't stupid. and kids see that kid's getting picked on, it could be me. I could be next. I'm no different. So, as a community of parents, whether our child is being picked on or not, we should care about that because that creates an environment for our children where they don't feel safe and they're going to be less likely to want to attend school, to find school enjoyable, to feel safe at school. And if you've done any studying at all, we know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you need to feel safe. You need to have a full belly. You need to have a place to sleep. But you need safety before you can open up and be worried about learning. And if you're focused on how am I going to get from this classroom to my next classroom without getting bullied, they're not paying attention to what's happening in class. So their grades are going to go down and the whole thing just spirals. The whole thing spirals.
There's so much to it. Whenever you think about a child going through this as a parent, while you're in the thick of things and you're raising your child, you always have kind of like on the back burner of you're trying to raise an adult. This child is eventually going to become an adult and be out in the world on their own. We're always trying to add a new skill each year, help with that maturity each level that they get. I worried as a parent, what was this teaching them? Would they grow up to then allow someone to abuse them, not stand up for themselves? Because some of them have found there was nothing to do about it. We did these things and it didn't stop. Mom did these things, dad, whomever, the caregiver, they did these things and it just didn't stop. Do they then, when they become adults, get in situations where they let people treat them a certain way and it then becomes acceptable? There's so much to it. And these aren't the bullying cases like that we would have dealt with when we were children. The terrifying thing, it doesn't stop. When we were children and watching things happen, or we were ourselves being bullied, once you got home, you were off the bus, you're away from those kids, you got a break until the next school day. These kids today do not get a break. Somebody is sending them messages on their phone, on the computer, posting things, taking pictures. The harassment of the bullying does not stop. I can't imagine what a child actually goes through, because I can't picture that in my mind of thinking of comparing that to I won't say the years, but whenever I was a child, it's very different. And I've heard cases where something happened on the bus and it would happen at the bus stop, and the school has said, well, once they leave the school, they're under the jurisdiction of the bus company, and then once they're off the bus, that they have nothing to do with that. There should still be consequences in a way of maybe you're not going to be allowed to participate in extracurricular activities at our school if you're found to be guilty of bullying someone. I mean, there's so many things they could do that could eliminate a lot of this, but kind of nobody wanting to take care of it and step in and say, this has to stop. And I think for parents, if you hear that your child's bullying, nobody wants to think that their child would do that to somebody. But all of these kids that are being bullied, there is a bully. That bully has parents. And not that it's the parents' fault, but the moment you know something and you know that they're doing something to harm somebody else, that's your cue to say, okay, we need to sit down and figure this out. What can we do as parents to make sure this stops? I think it's a knee-jerk reaction to say, well, kids will be kids and, that's okay. It's really not. And that has to be the standard to say that's not okay. So I think it's just such a dynamic topic that I know by the time a parent calls us as family support partners, they've already been through so much. They've tried to do everything. Um, and you would think that a parent could just call the school, get it taken care of, and it stops. It's not always like that.
So let's share with some families some of the the ways that we can help and some of the things that they can do. Because I think it's important for people to understand that if you call us, we get it. We're not going to say, well, you know, kids can be kids, or, oh, that's too bad. We do have a bullying tip sheet. And yeah, tip sheet, piece of paper is not going to help you. But we have laid out on that piece of paper, we have laid out very concrete steps for families to take, places for them to start. So first off, knowing what the school is required to do and knowing where to look for that information. So using the school's policy and knowing how to report bullying the way you're told to report it. Now, I mean, you or I would think, and in any workplace, if something is happening, somebody saying, well, they didn't report it the right way, doesn't absolve the workplace from the wrong that was happening. But for some reason, we could get away with that at school. So, you know, we start by making sure that families know what the policy for their specific school district says. And that's important. So if you're out there and you're not sure and you give our family support partner a call, they can work with you. Let's find what is specific in your school district, what they say, and work through with you a plan to find out if it says the school resource officer. All right, do you know who that is? Do you know how to get in touch with them? Well, this is how you can find out. And then learn how to make those reports. It is super, super tempting to stand at the bus stop and scream at the bus driver when your kid comes home. I have had that impulse myself, I'm sure. It's super tempting to go into the school and like tell the principal, one more kid punches your kid, you're going to come into the school and punch the principal. I'm not saying that I haven't maybe had that little fantasy myself, but it's not helpful. You know, this is where you call a friend and tell your friend and you vent to your friend. And if you don't have one who gets it, call us, because seriously, we're just going to be like, I hear you, man. Okay. We're going to commiserate with you. But then let's put a actionable plan into place. So we do have a tip sheet. We'll put it in the show notes. It's on our website, paparentfamilyalliance.org. It's under helpful resources, under the tip sheet tab. So there are some very specific, concrete steps that you can take. And so much of it starts with documentation. And we did do a podcast on how to document things, because you want to have very specific data collected. When did it happen? What time did it happen? Who was around? So that when the school says, we investigated, and they are required to investigate and notify you in writing the results of that investigation. You may not have known that. But you're going to want to know how they investigated. You know, I told you that there were 3 kids who saw it happen. Did you talk to those 3 kids? So those rules are very, very important. And I can share with people that I had a child who went through a very long stretch of very severe bullying. We followed all the steps that we were supposed to follow. And eventually, we filed an Office of Civil Rights complaint against the school district. And we won. It took a long time. And we moved before that. We didn't wait. It took 3 years. This is ridiculous. It took 3 years. Finally, all of our complaint and more was determined founded, and the school district was given 2 pages of corrective actions that they were supposed to take. Oh yeah, front and back, 2 pages. And in my initial conversations with our Office of Civil Rights investigator, they said that our documentation, the way that we had everything documented and evidence in writing of every single interaction, really made the difference to work on this, get it supposedly fixed. But if you have a particular child who is bullying your child, having that evidence over time could be really helpful in case you're in a situation where you need to take this outside of a school. Like if the bullying continues over the summer and you're going to get your local police departments involved, having all of that information is really, really important. And we're more than happy to walk through all of that with you. As a parent, I know that feeling of sending your child to school every day. I have to send my child into an environment where a group of children are going to tell my precious, wonderful child that they're going to kick him in the head with their steel-toe boot. So, I think all of us, we understand, we get it, and we could talk with you about maybe some different suggestions and solutions. And if your child has an IEP, whether or not they're being bullied specifically because of their disability, that bullying, if it impedes their education, needs to be addressed in the IEP. Because the IEP and even a 504 plan is what allows for access to education. So if that bullying is preventing your child to access their right to education, it needs to be addressed. So check out the tip sheet, give us a call. We're happy to take those feelings and kind of help you put them into, create an actionable plan that will hopefully, we can't guarantee anything, but will hopefully work. And before we log off, I did want to talk a little bit more about ADHD and dyslexia and see if you ladies had any, words of wisdom, things that you've learned that you want to share about either or both with our audience.
If I can say about ADHD or any diagnosis, I've talked to many parents that did not want that label. Like, just actually, they'll say, we don't want that label. I don't want my child labeled. I would encourage parents to look at any diagnosis the same way you would a medical one. If you were told your child had diabetes, you would change their diet. You would have them more frequently checking in and seeing what their weight was, what they're eating, meal plan. There's so many things that you do to help them be healthy. Look at all of this stuff, all of these diagnoses as the same thing. You wouldn't just be like, we don't really want diabetes, so we're just not going to accept that. You got to look at this. People need to start looking at mental health, that it is as serious as your physical health, and there are things to do for it.
Yeah. Pearl, do you have anything to share?
I was going to say, in reference to the, I don't have a lot of experience with dyslexia, but the ADHD, I just found with children with disabilities, I know that it has helped some when they have, if appropriate, if they have an aide to help them throughout the day. Doesn't have to be a full-time one-on-one aide the whole day, but sometimes if they have, an aide in the classroom, especially in elementary and middle school, that they can kind of, like Chrissy said, they leave the classroom and now she's got that energy and she's doing great. The same thing with possibly an aide if it's appropriate, that way they can talk to that person, kind of vent, and get on to the next class, project, whatever. That has seemed to help some families that I know with physical disabilities.
And I think that's a good point. I think having like some kind of like champion in the classroom for them. So yes, it could be, and I know that there's a lot of people who talk about having like a classroom aide, and in certain situations, instead of having an aide specifically for a child, like an aide who can like work with like a group of children. But whatever the case is, if there is a way for somebody to have a chat with a child, just kind of check in with them. And that's definitely something that you could put into your IEP, is for someone to check in with them. And you could kind of wean them off that. So maybe first thing in the morning, like yeah, around a morning break at lunchtime, an afternoon break, and then at the end of the day initially, and then extend that time, but somebody to check in, how you doing, how you feeling, how are things going, do you have what you need, and just interact a little bit. I think when they realize that there's someone who cares about them, then that really helps. When they have someone to kind of even troubleshoot with, man, I had 3 pens. I know I had 3 pens. I can't find any pens. All right, let's go to your locker and help you find those pens. Somebody who could just take that minute with them. And you're right, that it's hard for it to be a teacher.
Right.
So it is helpful if there's a learning support person, a classroom aide, whatever, who could check in with them. That's great. Chrissy, go ahead.
Oh, no, like, I've just noticed lately in families that I'm working with, that a lot of the kiddos with IEPs now have a case manager in the building, and it's like a
Yeah,
go-to
yeah.
person, just kinda like what you described. It's like checking in on them, making sure that they're all right, seeing if they need anything, checking in with the teachers, making sure they're doing okay, completing their assignments, that kind of stuff. And, like, at 3 different districts lately, that's been a thing, and it kinda just came to be probably middle of last school year is, like, when I heard of it for the first time. And it seems to be
Yeah.
working well. The one of my elementary age kiddos, she has ADHD, and she's got a case manager in the building that's become like her go-to person, and she's doing really well
Yeah.
this year. So I think that does actually make a difference.
And I'll just say, for understaffed schools, because realistically, we know they're out there, it doesn't have to be, we don't have to put all this on a guidance counselor. A lot of schools don't have social workers. It could be someone who that particular child connects with. So it can be the art teacher, if they really love art. It can be last year's teacher who just says hi and, hey, come over and check in with me in the morning. How you doing? How's everything going? Great. I'm glad to see you today. So it doesn't have to be, in smaller school districts. It could be a lunch aide, whatever, whoever your kiddo connects with, who the interaction with that person would be positive. And there are schools where sometimes that's the principal. Sometimes that's the vice principal, who is just personable and has a shared interest with the child. So yeah, it could be anybody, and that's great.
When my daughter was in academic SAP, like in 4th grade, I think her case manager was the nurse because
Yeah,
she was on
right?
medication and she stopped at the nurse's office once a day. So it was like easy for the nurse to check on her, and she even has reached out twice this year to make sure that she's doing okay, and she
Aw.
doesn't have to do that. She just did. So
Yeah. Shout out to those people who care about our kids at school. Like how lucky we are to have those. So I'll just say about dyslexia, because we haven't shared that much about dyslexia. Dyslexia can be diagnosed early. There's no dyslexia can't be diagnosed until 3rd grade. That's a lie. Dyslexia isn't seeing things backwards. If we thought it was seeing things backwards, when your child went to reach for the doorknob, they would reach this way. So it's not that they see things backwards, the way their brain interprets things. In our quest looking for a diagnosis to figure out why my child had a tough time reading, even though they were desperate to read, and had a great vocabulary, blah, blah, blah. One of the things that really kind of cemented this might be dyslexia, was their inability to accurately use words like above, below, before, and after. And in every list of symptoms of dyslexia that I've ever seen, I found one list that had that. And in a conversation I had with my child, maybe like just a week before, they inaccurately used those placement words. And when I saw that list, I was like, yeah, I bet you that's it. And then I kind of dug in a little bit deeper. So if you're listening and your school has been saying to you, whether you're concerned about your child having ADHD having dyslexia or any other learning difference in school, and the school is encouraging you to wait and see, wait for your child to mature, we need to wait a little bit longer. Waiting only causes more problems. Put your request for an evaluation for your child in writing. Make sure you keep a copy of it and stay on top of it. And if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, there's a bunch of agencies in the state of Pennsylvania that are able to help. Give us a call. We're happy to help. If we're not the right person to help you, we will do our best to point you in the direction and give you a warm handoff with an organization that can help. But I think it all comes down to trusting your gut as a parent.
For sure.
Final words of wisdom, ladies?
Just that FSPs, we're here to help you. We're here to guide you. We are here, we're parents just like you, and we're here to help in any way we can.
And Perl is new to the team. So you haven't seen Perl before. She's new to the team. We just brought her on this morning. She doesn't even have her headphones. She doesn't have her mics, nothing. This is her inaugural episode. We are thrilled to have Perl. She lives in Lebanon County, and she has a son with a physical disability as well.
Mhm.
And so we are so happy to really bring someone in who has that understanding as well, because like we said at the beginning of this episode, we know that our kiddos come with more than one challenge, and we want to make sure that when you call us that we understand and we can kind of encompass all that. We don't want to send you 900 places. So welcome to the team.
Thank you.
Yes, welcome.
All right.